Hey everyone, welcome to another review, and this review is for this new documentary that came out, and it didn't really come to theaters. It actually was released through Comic-Con, and yeah, basically you can buy the Blu-ray of this documentary, and documentary you actually have to buy online, which I did, and honestly I don't regret it because it's actually a very good documentary. And the name of this documentary is called The Death of Superman Lives. What happened? The story of this documentary is about AMC's one and only Jon Schnepp, who wrote and directed this documentary. Basically, he interviews all these people who worked on the set of the movie The Death of Superman, which was going to be a Superman movie that was released in the 1990s. It never happened. The film got canceled, but this movie was going to be made. This was actually a thing. This movie was actually going to star Nick Cage. Yes, Nicolas Cage as Superman. Oh, I would love to see that. Nicolas Cage. Can you imagine Nicolas Cage as Superman? I am Clark Kent. Listen to me, Lois. I'm Clark Kent, and I'm the Man of Steel, 'cause I'm gonna take your face off. It's coming off. Yeah, it just sounds just ridiculous, but that sounds awesome, because Nick Cage is awesome. And yeah, the movie was originally going to be directed by Tim Burton. Awesome. 1989 Batman Returns. Love Tim Burton. One of my favorite directors. And then it went through a lot of writers. Went through like Kevin Smith and some other guy. Dan Gilroy. Yeah, Dan Gilroy from Nightcrawler. Yeah, they were all going to be writers. And of course, Jon Peters as producer. And basically, the story of this documentary is about Jon Schnepp from AMC Movie Talk. Basically, he's interviewing all these people, and they're basically talking about all the stuff they went through making this movie, and why this film got canceled, and how a lot of these people didn't agree with each other, what this film was going to look like, what this film was going to be made, how it was going to look. And honestly, this documentary was so freaking interesting. I'm a big fan of Kevin Smith. I love Kevin Smith. Watch a lot of Kevin Smith stuff. Especially watch An Evening with Kevin Smith. I've watched all of them. All the Q&As, yes. Late Night with Kevin Smith, Burn in Hell. I've watched them all. I'm a big Kevin Smith fan. I love Comic Book Man. I love most of his movies, too. Some of his movies are pretty bad, but I love most of Kevin Smith's movies, and I'm glad he was in this documentary. And basically, if you've watched An Evening with Kevin Smith, he's talked about this. He talked about how he worked on this Superman movie and everything, and how he didn't get along with Tim Burton, and he thought Jon Peters, the producer, was freaking nuts. Yes, this documentary actually explores that, because when Jon Schnepp interviews Jon Peters, the producer of this Superman movie, yeah, he's kind of weird. Jon Peters is a freaking weirdo. He's almost like the antagonist of this movie, because his ideas were batshit crazy. Like, he didn't want Superman to wear the suit, he didn't want Superman to fly, and he wanted Superman to fight a huge spider. And his reasoning behind it was, he's like, well, do you know animals? Do you know insects? Well, a spider is one of the greatest creatures in the insect kingdom. I'm like, what the fuck does that got to do with Superman? It's Superman! And of course, he wears the suit, he flies. He's fucking Superman! And yeah, the way Jon Peters talks to Jon Schnepp in this documentary, you're just like, what is he talking about? And he keeps talking about, like, he's from the streets and all, and he wanted Superman to be a street fighter. Yeah, and even Tim Burton, when he interviews Tim Burton in this documentary, Tim Burton's like, yeah, I had a lot of disagreements with Jon Peters. You know, Jon Peters worked with him on the 1989 Batman movie. He's like, yeah, he kept trying to force his ideas, and they were just weird, and he just always pushed it. Yeah, Jon Peters actually did start off as a producer. He was actually like a hairstylist, but then he got into producing, and yeah, he was just strange in this movie. But I did love this documentary. I love how it explored all these filmmakers and explored how they were going to make this Superman movie in the 90s. And it's a shame that it got canceled, but this documentary explored it, and it was really awesome. And if you love comic books, I think you'll really enjoy this documentary. This is a really good documentary. It's very well directed, and the interviews were really well done, and it was actually there were some pretty funny scenes in this movie. And Kevin Smith, I love Kevin Smith. He's hilarious, and yeah, he's a straight-up comic book nerd. Come on, he does comic book, man. And I love his idea of the story, because he wanted this movie to be the death of Superman. And yeah, because it was originally called, like, Superman Reborn or something. He's like, well, that's a stupid title. Then he wanted the death of Superman. He wanted Brainiac, Lex Luthor. He wanted Doomsday in this movie, and the story he thought of. It was really good, and Kevin Smith is a straight-up comic book nerd, and of course he wrote this movie awesome. This movie sounded awesome. It never was made, but I wish it was, and Tim Burton would have been a good director, but it's a shame that Tim Burton and Kevin Smith didn't get along. As soon as Tim Burton heard Kevin Smith wrote the script, he just like threw it away and said, yeah, I'm gonna hire a different writer. Yeah, like I said, I watched a lot of An Evening with Kevin Smith. I've watched a lot of those, and Kevin Smith even said I had a lot of beef with Tim Burton and everything, and I won't go into details with that, but I love seeing Tim Burton, 'cause I haven't watched many interviews with Tim Burton. He doesn't do a lot of interviews. I've seen some, but like I've never seen him be in like documentaries or a lot of interviews, so it was really cool to see Tim Burton. In this movie, you actually see Tim Burton's house, it's exactly how I pictured Tim Burton's house to be. It was pretty good. And watching Tim Burton talk about this movie was pretty interesting. Jon Peters was hilarious to watch. He's absolutely crazy. He was really friggin' weird. It was kind of entertaining watching him. Jon Schnepp just looking at him the whole time like, okay. And he also interviews a lot of other people. He interviews some people like of the special effects. Like they showed like how they were gonna show this movie, and I really liked it because the effects in this movie looked all practical, and I love to see a Superman movie with all practicality and not like a straight up CG fest like Man of Steel is. It looked all practical. Even the look of Brainiac looked really cool. And yeah, I know like when the picture first got released for this movie, people saw Nick Cage in that Superman outfit. People were like, "God, that looks stupid." And I know the costume designer of this movie. He even interviews her, and she's like, "That was like a first draft." Because they actually show you the final draft of the Superman suit, and it looks really badass, and Nick Cage looks badass in it. So yeah, a lot of press were ripping on them about that, and some people still, to this day, rip on that. It was like a first draft, and Nick Cage didn't even take the photo very well. I think he was just goofing around, and honestly, the last draft of the suit looked really cool, and the costume designer explained it, and her side of the story was pretty accurate, and yeah, they also interviewed like Dan Gilroy. He was really cool. I like Dan Gilroy. Like I'm a big Nightcrawler fan. He had a lot of energy and a lot of spunk about this movie, and he was really excited about it. And a lot of people were excited about this movie, and it was a shame that this movie did get canceled. But I'm glad this documentary explored it, and explored all these filmmakers, and explored all the depths they went through, and explained a little bit of the story, and actually made me root for Nick Cage all the more, because I would love to see Nick Cage in this movie. And this movie is not just like an educational documentary. I know a lot of people watch documentaries to, you know, learn about things, learn about new things, about our society, about the world, history and stuff. There's some educational things in this movie, like about filmmaking, even about comic books. But this movie is more entertainment-wise. Like, if you're a big fan of Kevin Smith, or Tim Burton, or, God forbid, Jon Peters, but especially Jon Schnepp. Like, I'm a big fan of Jon Schnepp. I love AMC, I love AMC Movie Talk, and I'm glad, like, just a regular guy like Jon Schnepp made this documentary. He did a very good job directing this documentary. He asked very insightful questions, and it was really enjoyable, this documentary. I'm glad I bought this movie, and I'm glad I watched it. And it's a movie I'll probably watch a few more times, and yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. A few problems I had. I wish there was more Kevin Smith. I know, like, people are like, what? But, like, I really like Kevin Smith. I wish there was more Kevin Smith. He was only in, like, the first 40 minutes of the documentary. This documentary was, like, an hour and 45 minutes. He was a little bits in the ending, but he was just mostly in the first act of the documentary, and I wish they had more Kevin Smith, because he's just hilarious, and I love his comments. And I know this is not An Evening with Kevin Smith. This is a documentary about the Superman movie. It's about the death of Superman, not Kevin Smith. And yeah, but I wanted more Kevin Smith. He's just more entertaining. And I also wanted a little more depth with the story. They do explain the story of this Death of Superman movie, but I wanted more layers to it. They explained some of the characters, some of the actors' choice. Like, they wanted like Kevin Spacey in it. They wanted Christopher Walken in it. That's pretty cool. But I wanted more layers to the story. I wanted to know how, like, Clark Kent and Lois were going to be in this movie. I wanted to know more depths about Clark Kent's backstory, about the Kents, about him on Krypton. I wanted more layers to the story of the Superman movie, and they didn't really give that. They just showed a lot about the effects, the costume, the controversy, the actors, the directors, writers, which was really cool, and I really loved watching it, and this documentary is amazing, but I wish they explored more of the story of the death of Superman. Oh well, but this documentary was entertaining. It just makes me wish all the more that this movie existed, because the death of Superman would have been awesome, much better than Man of Steel. But oh well, we still got this documentary. It's a very good documentary. If you're a big fan of documentaries, you might enjoy this movie. But this documentary is mostly for comic book fans. if you're a huge comic book fan and you're a huge Superman fan, really check this movie out because this is a great documentary. Very educational and very entertaining. Scale 1 to 10, I'll give the movie The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened, an 8.5 out of 10. Yes, I really enjoyed this movie. It was really good. I learned a lot. I enjoyed a lot. Check it out. So in the comment section, please tell me, do you think Nick Cage would have been an awesome choice for Superman? Really, just really think about it. Do you think Nick Cage, do you think he could have been a good choice for Superman? Comment below, let me know. I think he would have, but comment below, let me know. As always, if you like this video, please like and subscribe to this channel. Enjoy the dark side.